Hey buddy, this is Colin, Mr. Old School Gamer, bringing you another clip from the wonderful world of Warships. Today I'm bringing you a clip from a ship that is totally new for me and for this channel. I just unlocked the new tier 10 Japanese gunboat, the Harugumo. And as you might know, if you watched my channel or my videos before, the predecessor, the tier 8 Japanese gunboat, the Akizuki, is one of my absolute favorite ships in the game. And I don't really know how many wonderful First Blood and Kraken Unleashed with Yamamoto Captain games I have in the Akizuki. So, of course, when Wargaming announced that Akizuki will receive two bigger brothers in its alternate line, this was, of course, Christmas comes early for me, because since I love that ship, I knew that these two ships, the Kidekase at tier 9 and the Harugumo at tier 10, was gonna be a new great addition for me as a destroyer main and a big enthusiast regarding the Japanese line. And well, they didn't disappoint. Now I choose quite a different path building this ship. Usually I always go for the concealment build on all my destroyers, except of course for the standard exception, the Khabarovsk, which pretty much isn't a destroyer, it's more like a light cruiser, and well, you can actually say the exact same thing about the tier 10 Harugumo. This ship isn't really a destroyer per se. This is a light cruiser, and more so, even more so than the Khabarovsk. I mean, if you guys are big Khabarovsk lovers and players and enthusiasts, you guys are gonna love this ship. Because this is like Khabarovsk on crack. This ship is just insane. And of course you have 15.1 kilometer range on your guns. Compared to the Khabarovsk, I think 13.5. And the Khabarovsk has, hope I don't say this wrong, 6 guns, right? Maybe 8. Well, these beasts have 10 guns. And well, you can just look at this rainbow I'm creating. A rainbow of HE spam and fire chance. Because that is pretty much what this ship is. I mean, I don't know if you saw that, but that was a Des Moines and a Salem that I'm pretty much engaging here. That's 2 tier 10 radar cruisers. That pretty much needs to back up and go dark, because I am present, I am here. So I pretty much counter my own counter in this ship, which is pretty insane. So the Des Moines that I already set a couple of fires on starts to push forward again. So of course, since I'm already spotted, there's probably a destroyer pushing the one line that is spotting me. So I might as well shoot him. So this is me making a Des Moines kite me pretty much. I mean, you do have to get used to the gun arcs. There is not really easy to handle, especially at the 15k range. Because it's pretty much like holding a fire hose as a firefighter. It's Especially when ships are trying to evade and dodge, you need to lead them and try to guesstimate where they are trying to turn. But when you do get your perfect aim and you just start that insane fire spam, well, you know you're golden. Now, I did think these torps were gonna come sooner or later, so that's why I angled the way I did with my aft towards the direction of the enemy destroyer. I'm shooting off my torps if this Salem is feeling brave and thinks he wants to push me. Otherwise, I will just continue to fire spam him behind the island. And this game will showcase a bit of this kind of playstyle, but I have other games as well in this ship that you can tell that this ship is pretty much a tier 10 destroyer that is a mini Wooster with a smokescreen. Because if you have the possibilities to stop and pop your smoke, and there's an enemy cruiser or a battleship nearby, maybe even behind an island, you can just sit there the full duration and just spam fire after fire after fire upon him. And as you can see, I have 2 enemy radar cruisers hiding behind this island because they don't want to push. They can't push because I will spot them before they spot me, and I can burn them down just as easily as they trying to burn me down, pretty much. So yeah, this ship is pretty goddamn awesome. Now, I do actually play pretty defensively this match, because as you can see, it's only me and this French new work-in-progress battleship, the John Bart, that is actually holding this entire flank. And as you can see, they aren't really pushing. The Montana is slowly creeping forward, the Republic is still sitting in spawn pretty much, and those 2 radar cruisers, they don't want to peek that island. So it's only us 2 guarding this entire flank, and that's why I don't play as aggressively as you probably can do in this ship, and as I have been doing in quite a lot of other games, where you have a bit more team backup. But I mean, every map that has islands on it is just Christmas for this ship, because you can sit behind pretty much any island and you can land perfect rainbow of fire on any ship sitting on behind any other island. It almost doesn't matter how big of an island or how tall of an island, because as you see, these shells, they really arc. And of course, if you do happen to end up in the ocean map, which happens one in New Year's Eve, pretty much, then of course you have your smoke screen. The only thing that I should say for people who doesn't play this ship yet is that you have to be a bit cautious using your smoke screen. As you saw before, when I sat in my smoke, there was torp arriving. So of course, if you know that there is an enemy destroyer anywhere in the vicinity, then you have to be really cautious sitting in your smoke screen, because when I said this was a mini Wooster, that isn't only a big pro. There is also a bit of a con to that situation. And that is, of course, that you are big. You are probably one of the biggest destroyers in the game, and you turn like a brick and you're really slow, just as your little brother the Akizuki. So torp dodging is not really a competitive sport for this destroyer. I mean, if you sail in a straight line, full speed, and torps pops up at 90 degrees angle towards your ship, you can probably not dodge any of them. You will eat as many as possible, so you have to be really careful. You can't really rely on your maneuverability or speed playing the ship. You have to rely on your guns, of course, with a big ass alpha damage. You have to rely on islands and good experience, I should say. Now I'm trying to go around this island to support our Yamato and of course my John Bart buddy here that has helped me hold this flank for so long. The Salem has finally pushed up in the cyclone and they start to contest our base area pretty much. So we need to deal with these guys. So this is a perfect situation. I can park behind this island and just, well, if the enemy stays alive, of course. But like this. I can just try and reverse and keep this island between me and the Montana, and I can just rain down my fire upon him. And this is pretty much the sweet spot for this destroyer. Now I don't really think there is a destroyer close by, so I pop my smoke. But unfortunately the battleship goes out of my detection range in the cyclone, so I need to push out of the smoke again. But as you can see, even though it's only 8 minutes left on the clock, there's only 2 ships. Well, there were only 2 ships, but since I said that, there are 3 ships on each side that is dead. So this has been a pretty stale and uneventful match so far. So the win is up for grabs. Now I'm trying to look at the minimap. It looks like our Fletcher is gonna take out that Shimakaze that is in the, well, where the A-cap usually are. And I should probably try and do something about this rune or this Shangmu that is pushing the mid section of the map. I do have a bit of a support with this Moskva. I also have a Musashi in the sea cap and a Montana to my right. So I feel pretty confident that we should be able to deal with these guys pushing in. Because it's usually not a good situation when you push into a crossfire situation like they're doing right now. That said, the only time it can actually work is in a situation like this, when there's a cyclone in effect. Because then all ships need to be within 8 kilometers, of course, to your ship to be able to crossfire you. Now we dealt with the rune and it's 7 ships against 6, so it's still a very close game. I was considering trying to get position to be able to lob my shells over to the Iowa in the sea cap, but then this Yamato pops up instead. So I start to engage him with my guns and I shoot some preemptive torps. I shot the torps a bit before the prediction line because I thought that he would probably turn in. But I don't really think I considered he will turn in this much. So my torps will not be effective, but my guns will. Earning me my second kill and my Confederate medal. So I'm up to 130,000 damage done, which is at this point a pretty respectable game, but in a Harugumo you're just getting started. I mean, I'm just guessing that Wargaming will nerf this ship soon in the future, so I'm just trying to get as many fun games in this ship beforehand, because I can't even imagine when the majority of the player base have researched and grinded to this ship, and you will see like 5 or 6 Harugumos on each side. I mean, that is the day that Wargaming actually killed off the entire battleship player base, I think. Because playing a battleship against this destroyer, well, it's not fun. Let's just say it, it's not fun. I mean, usually when all the battleship players have cried before about HE spam from destroyers and things, I always took it with a pinch of salt, like, okay, come on, what the fuck, you can consider your positioning on the minimap, you can read the minimap to begin with, and maybe you shouldn't be out of position, maybe you should go with your fleet, and all those things. And of course some of those things are also applicable with this ship, but with this ship I actually think that BB players have a point. Because it's not really that much that can counter this ship. There are a few things. Of course, as I said before, this ship needs to have either islands or smokescreen to be really effective as a gunship. And sitting in smokes, of course, are a big risk for this ship, because if you have a destroyer in play still in the enemy team, you will always run the risk of getting blapped by a couple of torpedoes. Sitting behind an island like I did before, arcing my shells over the island, burning down the battleships, it's not really much red team can do to counter that. Maybe possibly have their own Harugumo shooting at our Harugumo, but that would be a pretty waste of the shells for the red Harugumo, so... And, well, I can't really see any big counters to that kind of playstyle in this ship. But of course also sitting in a smokescreen in the open in this ship can be pretty hard countered by any high tier US light cruiser. Like, for say, Worcester. I mean, a Worcester can pop his radar and blap this ship in a couple of seconds, and you can't do anything about it. Because you are too slow and too big to try and evade. And since the Worcester has a, I think, 44-second timer on his radar if you run the upgraded version, you have no chance in hell trying to evade Worcester in this ship. And of course you can be hard countered if you have a skillful CV player on the enemy team. Because as I said, even though this ship is part of the so-called Japanese anti-aircraft destroyer line like the Akatsuki, it has pretty meh AA. So of course if a skilled CV player chooses to target you, which he really should actually, then it's gonna be really hard. I mean, trying to survive a cross drop from a good CV player in this ship is a nightmare. That said, there is an upcoming rework on the CV class coming up, which will probably take away that possibility, I think, if I understood it correctly. And as you can see, this is me gunfighting enemy Sao. Because why not? I mean, it's just a Sao. Why should I fear him, right? I'm a Harugumo. And it's 8 seconds left on the timer. So in this ship you pretty much hard counter your hard counters, which is quite a special thing in a destroyer. So this ended up being a pretty good game, but that said, if you're good at finding great locations behind islands on maps, you will probably end up doing about 150 to 200k damage games in this ship. It's not really that hard, especially if you run the gunboat build that I run on my Harugumo, where you can aim and hit ships up to 15 kilometers. So I ended up with 200k damage, almost 500,000 credits, Arsonist and Confederate, and 4 kills. Think if I gotten that Kraken and gotten that Yamamoto, I think 1.6 second reload, that would have been amazing on these guns. Well, next time perhaps. And 2,500 base XP, which is always nice to get in a tier 10 game. But pretty much the entire team did really well, which is really nice to see. And pretty good damage all around. Tanked a bit over 1 million potential damage for the team. And as you can see, set 14 fires, resulting in about 60k damage. So most of the damage was actually done by the pure alpha damage on these guns. And final results. After all things paid for, you get 200k credits and 5,700 experience. So all in all, pretty decent game. But now let's jump into the special build for this ship. So, modules, consumables and captain build on my tier 10 Harugumo. First off, we look at the consumables. We have, of course, upgraded ones on everything because we can afford it. If you can't afford it, I would say damage control party and I would say torpedo reload booster. Smoke and speed you can do without. Smoke is kind of good, but still there are so many islands you can park behind, so you don't really have to depend on smokes. Because you can pretty much lob your shells over any island, so that is not that viable. But if you can afford it, use a premium one on everything. Upgrade wise, as I said before, these two aren't really viable on any ship, I think. I haven't used these on anything. So main armament 1, because guns are your bread and butter, and you also use very nasty torps on this ship, which is also good on this one. So main armaments modification 1 on the first slot. Second slot, the same thing on every destroyer that I own, propulsion modification. Because if your engine gets knocked out, you're a sitting duck and you die. That is pretty much the entire explanation. You don't need this, you don't need this, you need this. Third slot, you don't really need better traverse speed. You don't really need better dispersion, because it's pretty goddamn good dispersion at 15k range anyways. And torpedo tubes are traversing fast enough. And since these gunboat destroyers in the Japanese lines are actually considered AA destroyers, like the Akatsuki, the Kitakase, and Harugumo, well, the AA is pretty meh, as you can see on the stats, but boosting that is pretty much the most viable option out of these three, I would say. So AA gun modification, at least you can probably scare some plane pilots with this one. Propulsion modification is the best option in the fourth slots, I would say, because you usually end up finding like surprise location where, oh, suddenly I'm undetected, but I'm shooting at this Yamato behind this island. So you need to slow down very fast and park at that spot, because then you can just farm him for days. And if you do sit in smoke, which I really don't recommend, because you will get blapped by any destroyer with torps in the vicinity, this won't help you that much, because you don't accelerate fast enough to dodge any torps. But of course it's good to be able to move forward or move backwards behind an island, if you sit behind an island shooting at a battleship or something like that. I think it's still a better option than steering gears, but this can actually also be a bit viable. But I think this ship is too... I mean, it turns like a brick. It's like turning a battleship, so I don't really think steering gears help that much. And this won't help that much either. So, propulsion modification. Concealment, because you actually have a pretty viable detection range, even though I have gone with a total gun build on this one. I don't even have concealment expert on my captain, because I want to go with the gun build, the full gun build. But still, I have pretty competitive detection at 6.9 kilometers. I'm only 800 meters away from Z52 and Akatsuki at tier 8. So, I mean, I won't outspot that many destroyers, to pretty much only the Khabarovsk. But I can contest somewhat with this. Target acquisition I don't use on any ships. Some people use it on battleships. And steering gears I only use for Khabarovsk. And of course, guns are your bread and butter, so buff that reload even further. At this point I'm at 2.6 seconds. I mean, I have moved my Yamamoto captain up to the Harugumo, because I want to try out the Yamamoto captain on this one. And just imagine getting Kraken Unleashed with Yamamoto captain on this ship. I'm guessing I have like 1 second reload, or maybe 1 point... I don't really know where it will land, but maybe 1.4 second reload on 10 100mm IFHE shells. I mean, that is a minigun. That is a real minigun. I mean, you can blap Woosters with this ship in a couple of seconds if you have Kraken Unleashed with Yamamoto captain. So yeah, go with main battery modification 3 in the last slot. And flag-wise, I would recommend India X-Ray for extra fire chance, same as Victor Lima. Right now I'm running Sierra Mike for some extra speed, and of course some XP flags, but I would probably go with this one. Fire extinguishing time is always good. But otherwise, the fire chance ones are good enough. Camouflage, of course, anything with detection range. Otherwise, you can choose whatever extra premium camouflage that you would like. Now, looking at the captain skills, this is a bit different from any other destroyer pretty much, because I don't use Concealment Expert for this one. And that is because I want to have IFHE for that extra alpha damage, even though the 100mm got a buff in the recent update. I still want to run Inertia Fuse for being able to punish all those heavily armored cruisers and battleships. And of course I do need AFT for that 15.1 kilometer range on my guns. So that pretty much means that I have to not take Concealment Expert, but since what I said before, I already have a pretty decent concealment. I don't really feel that this is so necessary on this ship. But the first skill you take, usually I go with the preventative maintenance on destroyers, but on this ship it can actually be pretty good to know how many ships are looking at you, because usually you gunboat in the open, detected, or you sit behind islands and you arc shells over islands, and you get detected a couple of seconds and then you get undetected. And it's a pretty good thing to know how many people are actually trying to shoot you. I mean, can I sit here still and just continue farming this Yamato, this Kurfürst, or should I move? That is pretty much for this. Second one, always, always, always last stand. There is nothing else you take second, always last stand. Third one, I would probably actually say Demolition Expert first. Because, sure, Superintendent always great, but the only consumable that I use that much is probably Torpedo Reload Booster. I mean, I don't use speed that much, I don't use smoke that much, because if you sit in smoke and ducky in this ship, you will always get either blapped by a Worcester with radar, or a Harugumo or a Shimakaze with 15-16 torps. So I actually use island cover more for my ducky than I use my smokes. So I would say go with Demo Expert first. Fourth captain skill that you will take is of course Inertia Fuse for that high alpha damage output. Because you can always ducky ships closer to you first off. But without this, if you would choose to go with advanced fire training first, it wouldn't really matter, because all your shells will just what do they say? They crush. I completely forgot the word. They crush against the hull. Yeah. They don't do any damage. So use this first. You can ducky to ships up to about 13.5, maybe 14. And that is better than being able to shoot ships at 15k and don't do any damage. So you take this one, but the fifth perk that you will take is this one, because after you have this one you want the extra range to be able to ducky ships, battleships fleeing away, battleships behind the islands far away, you want this one. So this is the 5th captain skill that you will get on your captain. And then I would probably actually go for Adrenaline Rush, which is a given on all my ships, all my destroyers, all my cruisers, all my battleships. This is the next perk I will go for because, as I said before, I probably only use the torpedo reload. I mean, I could actually probably drop this one. I think I'm gonna try out the Harugumo a bit more and test it out with this build. But this is actually a captain skill that I'm considering dropping for maybe basic fire training. But I mean, still, you have such small reload, so I probably won't even go with this one. I would probably go with survivability expert instead. So that is probably something for the future, to try and change this up for this one. But all the others I would recommend you taking. So that said, this has been a really long video. I do really appreciate you guys, all your support or all your love. It really means a lot to me. So don't forget to drop a like and a comment below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Bye bye.